You're listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Hello, and welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is dombrightmon, author of Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself. Dom is an active member of Toastmasters International and has given dozens of inspirational talks and was awarded for his leadership as an area director, the youngest area director in his region at the age of 23. Welcome, Dom. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks a bunch for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, Dom, you're an author and a podcaster, and we'll talk about the podcast later on. But first, what inspired you to become an author?
Yeah, so funny enough, authorship wasn't always a foreseeable goal in my mind at one point, but back in 2012, I got into this car accident on my 21st birthday and almost lost my job. And my father himself, he was stricken with Alzheimer's, and it really got bad that year. And then it just led me to realizing that I need to change. And just after that, I went to the leadership section of the library and became much bigger of a thinker than before, and just found this activity where you write your own obituary. And for some strange reason in my obituary, I just wrote down I was a best-selling author as one of the things I would accomplish in life. And after that, shortly after writing that obituary, a couple months later, I was at a conference and I was talking to these wonderful folks. And this one lady I was talking to, I also had a reading list at the time I was using kind of as a business card, kind of like the 100 books for dynamic living. That's what I called it, because a coach of mine said I should take my favorite books and make a list because he was liking the books I was recommending him. And I handed this list to this wonderful lady, and she looked at the list and looked right back at me, looked at the list again, and asked me where my book was.
Like, why isn't your book on this list?
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm 22. Like, what the heck am I going to write about? Yep, and lo and behold, she even dared me. It's like, hey, all right, a year from now, why don't you put your name on this list as one of the authors and write a book? I'm like, nope. And this was after the obituary, too. I was like, nope, thanks. And she even offered to join me in the challenge. It was like, all right, how about we both do it? And after that, still, nope, I am good, lady. You are too intense. I'm out of here. Yeah,
but what an interesting chance meeting.
Yeah, it really was. I have no idea that meeting was supposed to happen that day. I guess in a way she was kind of that igniter in a way, one of those folks that I guess in the way that God puts in your path to ignite something in your life to go out there and do something different with your life. So it was a blessing.
So then you went home and thought, okay, I wrote my obituary and this was a goal. And now this chance meeting, did you think, well, now I will become an author, or did you still need time to convince yourself to do this?
Yeah, so after that, I went ahead and thought, you know what? Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. And then funny enough, you mentioned Toastmasters earlier. I was a part of a group. And the particular speech that night, there was a Q&A session. And one of my buddies, he knew about the conversation because I told him about it. So he decided to call me out during the Q&A session, like, hey, Dom, when you writing your book?
Oh, in front of everybody.
Yep. And I was like, darn it. In my head, I wanted to run up and drop kick him for saying that. But I went ahead and said, you know what? A year from this today, my book is going to be published. And then 10 months later, the book was actually released, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations. And wait, how old were you at this time?
23.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Congratulations.
That is fantastic. Yeah. Wow. So tell us, what is the book about?
Yeah, so I like to call it Self-Help for the Distracted because it's 50 pages of content. It's the stuff that I've taken from dozens and dozens of other books and actually implemented in my own life and put it into a package. Because if we're going to be preaching and teaching something in a way through this writing, it's like it's got to be the stuff that I've actually done or believe in myself. And
right,
it goes into like the process and the steps I've taken to actually to become a full-time librarian, to rise through the ranks quickly into leadership in a volunteer organization, and to use those skills to actually basically put my personal growth on steroids and to break out of my shell as an introvert and actually learn some extroverted techniques and just walk slowly through the crowd and then just greet more people. So it's a nice little self-help book that doesn't have all the fluff in it.
Interesting. And then what was the process like for writing it? Did you start with an outline, or was everything just in your head and you sat down and started writing?
Yeah, the process for book number 1, right after that meeting where I said the book was going to be done in a year, I went ahead and wrote 14 pages of content, just hand wrote it all down on a notebook, and then I basically hibernated for 2 months. And this was around like November at the time, so around January I went ahead and picked up the pen again and actually took some time after work to actually go into a Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts and just actually write. And this was actually after I went ahead and talked it out with my coach at the time, and he helped me to come with an outline. And the outline, I probably had like 5 or 6 chapters with it, but ended up with 9 points because as I was writing, a lot of things weren't making sense, and some things belonged with a separate chapter on its own. So it was like a combination of a lot of things. And to be honest, a lot of folks, they'll be like, yeah, just write every day. Well, me personally, I just wrote at least maybe 1 to 3 times a week, like after work, just gave myself time and got into my place of productivity, my POP, and just started to write that way. And then bit by bit, brick by brick, it finally came into fruition because it was August. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm about to hit the deadline here. I'm doing it. So August, I just put together what I had.
Yeah, so we've talked to lots of authors who say that they write every day and they need to, do that every day. But I see exactly what you mean. You're saying you just had a certain amount of time basically per week that you did it instead of per day, but it's still the same outcome. You got it finished.
Yeah, that was the beautiful thing about it. I was glad that it was over. I didn't expect all that came after it. I was just writing the book just to write the book. I didn't know it actually inspire other people.
And then when you were writing, were you still handwriting the book or were you typing?
I was still handwriting the book because in a way, when you write things down, it's a lot faster. I'm a lot faster with writing than typing. Mm-hmm. So when I wrote it all down, it gave me a chance to actually go home and then type it all up. So that way, when I'm typing it in and putting it all together, I'm editing twice and I could take out some things and add different things. So that way it'll be a lot more crisp.
Great idea, because you're seeing it again right after you wrote it or shortly after you wrote it. That's great. Instead of just writing and moving on and then going back later on going, what was I saying here?
Oh, yeah. It's like, okay, what influence was I under writing this? And I don't even believe in that stuff. It's like, oh, shoot.
All right. So then you wrote it, and then did you have someone edit it?
Oh, of course. I had a friend of mine edit it. He was a buddy of mine. We go probably about, almost 10 plus years now, back to middle school almost. And he went to Morgan State University, got an English degree and got a degree in screenwriting. And he just proofread the book and just asked some questions like, okay, what does this mean? What does that mean? To actually expound on other points. And after he emailed it back to me, I just went ahead and just made sure I get it formatted, then just actually went to print after getting a book cover and all that good stuff.
Well, tell us about the process of finding your book cover and the formatting.
This book, the first one, the second time with the book after this one, I went ahead and outsourced that one. But the first time, I just went ahead and I was listening to, I forgot which episode it was. She has so many, Joanna Penn. She just mentioned like, okay, use Garamond font and all this other stuff. So I just went ahead and did it myself, and it was a pain in the butt. I was using Microsoft Word. Every time I got to page 19 and went to page 20, it would say page 29 and vice versa.
Oh, my gosh.
That was hellacious. I was just so bad at that. I'm like, oh, gosh. For the next book, I'm not doing this. It was so much of an ordeal. And the book cover itself, I went to Fiverr.com.
Oh, okay. A lot of people seem to use Fiverr.com. Well, we have also, but yeah, it seems to be a pretty successful platform for people.
Oh yeah,
But-
you were right about that. You were right about that. That was not as much of a head pounding activity.
Yeah.
Right. That's where we got our logo for our podcast on Fiverr.com. Are you printing the book on demand, or did you go through a publishing company?
Oh yeah, so this was print on demand through CreateSpace.com when it was still alive, and man, I miss those folks. But yeah, CreateSpace, and it was beautiful because the proof copy came back. Funny enough, the first person I went to on Fiverr, they got the cover right, exactly right the first time.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, because it's like with the cover, I just drew it on a piece of paper and had a concept of it. And then when it came back, it was better than I imagined. They just saw the book description and it came back so beautifully. And then just after that, just went to CreateSpace, had the template right. The formatting was right after Microsoft Word had me in a darn metaphorical headlock, and just basically had the proof copy. The proof copy actually came back right the first time too, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing!" And then boom, just hit published, and it went live in like 10 hours after that. Because I saw the whole disclaimer, was like, "All right, it takes up to 72 hours for it to go live on Amazon." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So the original date was like October 30th or something. I think it was like October 25th or whatever. I just pressed the the launch button, and lo and behold, 10 hours later, it's like in the middle of my workday. It's like, oh, shit, it went live.
Oh, that is exciting. And did you contact that lady that you met at the conference?
Oh, yes, I did. Got her email, and then just went ahead and was like, hey, thanks a bunch. Gave her a signed copy, gave her a big hug when I saw her. I was like, oh, you're actually doing it. Okay, yeah.
That's cool. I'm sure she was very happy for you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's funny how women are igniters in a way.
Yeah. So what about book promotion? How are you promoting Going North?
Yeah, it's a book promotion. So that's really a 24/7 thing in a way, because it's like when you're networking and talking with people, if you can find a way to slide your title into conversations, then that's one way of doing it. Because funny enough, Going North, it started off as a joke back in 2011 when someone asked me how's it going, and I'm like, okay, cool, it's going north. Yeah, so conversations with people, just having it on the business card, getting on wonderful podcasts like this one, starting one of my own, going to just conferences, doing book swaps with people, vending events is also another thing too, and just always asking for reviews. That was actually one of the biggest blessings with the first book, is the fact that a couple folks actually offered to do it for me, and I didn't even have to ask them to do it, because like they know me for years and always been helpful to them, and they just wrote reviews.
Oh, that's nice.
For me online. And it's like that's a big plus too. Try to get as many reviews for your books as you can on Amazon, because that's the main place where folks usually go for buying books.
Sure.
Or they go to their local bookstore.
And you're right. It seems like people have told us in the past that it is difficult to get friends and relatives or anyone to write a book review. And so good for you for finding people who would do that.
Not even asking, not finding. People came to Dom, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Oh yeah, one of the blessings from above right there.
Well, you mentioned book swaps. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one thing I like to do is go, especially when I first published the book, I went to a lot of book events, and Morgan State University, usually every year, even though they skipped it last year, they like to have an African American book expo where they have about, man, there were so many tables. There's probably like 100, maybe more vendors there.
Wow.
And a few of the authors, they would have multiple books. And this was, especially after I launched my podcast, it's like, all right, so in a way, I just mentioned, like, hey, it's awesome that you wrote this book here. Mind doing a book swap since I'm a fellow author? And 9 times out of 10, they usually go for it because it's really cool. Then we both take a picture and then put it on social media later as a way to promote ourselves simultaneously in a way. And it's a nice money saver too. And you get to practice the art of negotiation, because it's really a mutual trade where you both really benefit from it. It's like, and especially if you like each other's books, then you can get a review that way. That's actually how I got one of the reviews for my book, because I did a book swap with somebody and they offered to write a review on Amazon for it. So that's another way you can get reviews, just network with fellow authors, because you're both most likely on the same goal to get the word out there. And
Sure.
of course, get your names out there. So why don't you help each other out?
Great idea. You take a copy of my book, I'll take a copy of yours, and I'll see you on Amazon.
Yes, sir.
That's excellent.
Well, the book swap we had not heard of before, so I think that's a wonderful new tip for our listeners. So thank you for sharing that.
Woohoo!
So you've been listening to the Author Inside You podcast, and you've decided, I'm going to write my book. You're now motivated, but maybe you want to read something online. Well, we have the perfect place for you.
It's called Scribophile, and you can find it at scribophile.com, scribophile.com. And on the webpage, there's an academy that you can go to and learn about different topics, such as how to format a novel manuscript, or even common screenplay writing mistakes. It's a great resource for writers.
Let's face it, we all like to find people who are similar to us. And on Scribophile, there are plenty of groups that you can join.
One of my favorites is the humor one, and believe it or not, there are over 420 members within the group. So if you have a question about humor, or you started to write a humorous novel and you want some feedback on it, you can upload an example of your writing and get feedback from other humor writers. It's just a fantastic resource that you really need to check out. It's Scribophile, and you can find it at scribophile.com. So tell us about your podcast.
Yes, the Going North podcast itself. It is something that I'm really grateful for because it came out of the book, because folks have been telling me for years I got this great radio voice, and I think
You
it was Yep, and I think it was 2014 or so. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do a podcast. I'm gonna start a podcast. I don't know what it's gonna be about. I'm gonna start one. And then 2016, the book comes out. I was like, oh, yeah, sweet. I got this book. Sales were slacking in summer 2017. I was like, okay, what's a good way to market this book? I can start a podcast. I'll call it the Mr. Music and Reads podcast. I just do book reviews for authors and mention underground artists alike. And then I was having coffee with a coaching buddy of mine named Amy, and she was like, hey, why don't you call it the Going North podcast? Because in a way, the book itself is kind of like a brand. I kind of have a brand here, and it's like, I want to like drop that. So lo and behold, I went ahead and called it the Going North podcast, and I read Derek Sivers' book about Anything You Want. It was a nice quick read, and he mentioned how I started CD Baby to help out independent artists. So I'm like, okay, I could just interview authors and then give them a platform, especially self-published first-time authors, because one of the things that a lot of folks hear is like, hey, write your book, but you still got to promote your book, and podcasting is a way to do it. And my first ever interview, even though it was a great interview, was that the radio host kept cutting me off every other sentence. And I'm like, let me make sure that their experience wasn't the same as mine. So I just went ahead and started that. I think as of today, I think it was like 151 episodes deep. So every Monday and Thursday, a different interview gets uploaded from an author from anywhere in the world.
Wow, that's impressive. 2 a week.
That's a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it is. It was originally going to be once a week, but the problem is that I was so consistent with it, and I basically had this whole backlog of interviews. I had probably about a good 3 months worth, and it's like, I really don't want to record something and be like, all right, so your interview is going to be up in 7 months, buddy.
Right.
Yeah, so basically July 2017, not 2018, I just went ahead and said, you know what? I'm going to try the bi-weekly thing Monday and Thursday and just give it a shot so that way I can clear this backlog out and then just keep it consistent. And it actually has worked out very well so far. It's almost been a year since I went to twice a week, so that's a blessing in disguise.
Great. And do you do that all yourself? Do you edit and put it on social media and everything?
Yeah, I do that now because in the beginning, the editing process, it was a steep learning curve because Audacity would crash on me and Adobe Audition was great, but I didn't know how to use it effectively. So now I'm at the point where I just really just do it all on my own. Just do the editing and adding all the other things and social media promotion, all the good stuff.
Our podcasts are similar because we both want to motivate other authors. So I think it's really nice that we're speaking to you and kind of joining forces by saying, here are 2 podcasts. Listen, and maybe we can help each other. I mean, that's what we all want to do is help each other, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's not like you can only listen to one podcast a week. There's no reason why you can't listen to Going North, right?
And the author inside you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Dom, what's your advice for people who are thinking about writing a book, or maybe they've started writing a book, but they haven't finished it?
For those who are writing a book right now, to say this is the best time to not only write your book, but also publish it. I'm not sure which article it was, but I think it was 2017. It was up 270% in terms of self-published books being published, because it's like that. It's so easy now to have a great product, a great final product that is comparable, heck, probably even better than some of the books from the main publishers, the big house publishers. And it's such a blessing in disguise. So for those who are writing their book and looking to publish it, just write the book, but also think of ways to promote the book and sell the book after you publish it, because that's a lot of stuff that folks forget. It's like, yeah, write your book, publish it.
Right.
And then when you get that proof copy and you stare at it for an hour like you just won and became the world heavyweight champion, now you got to actually go out there, put yourself out there and promote the book and sell it. You can't be introverted in your show the whole time and then just rely entirely on social media. I mean, it's great, but it's like you still got to get out there too, because there's a big, wonderful world out there full of other people who've done wonderful things, and they want to hear about the wonderful things that you're doing, and they want to read about the wonderful things that you're doing. So just not only write the book, get it done, but also find ways to actually market the book after you publish it, and think of ways that you can get the book out there and keep it going strong as long as possible. Because especially as a self-published author, you're doing all the footwork on yourself. You're putting yourself out there, and you just got to keep gas in that tank and keep on going.
Excellent. Excellent advice. Thank you.
So, Dom, I want to ask you about Toastmasters International. Do you think that because of that experience, it has made you easier to promote your book?
Yes, ma'am, indeed. And not just for that, but just as a whole human being, because I joined Toastmasters in 2013, October 2013, and well, I can't believe it's almost been 6 years now, but in those years, it's been one of the greatest things that ever has happened to me, because you're in a room full of people in the same goal of just getting better, whether it be a public speaking, leadership, or just other things. And you get to connect with people with different, diverse backgrounds and levels of expertise. When you go in there, not everybody is this 7 out of 5 star performing public speaker going around the world making millions of dollars with 3 TEDx talks or whatever. Everybody has a different area of expertise and a different level, so you get to learn from folks with various backgrounds. And then when you build relationships with them, you get to learn from them, and you get to meet fellow authors if you actually network within the club and get deeper into it. And they may even support you as well and get to gain friends for a lifetime. Because of my networking, to be honest, truth be told, really, I wouldn't even be an author today fully, at least at 27 now today, because I joined Toastmasters. I joined Toastmasters just to host a public speaking seminar at my church I go to. I didn't expect all that came out of it because I put so much into it. It's one of those few things that's still in the world where if you put a lot into it, you'll get a lot out of it. If you connect with as many wonderful people as you can, learn from them, and they inspire you, you can then inspire others. So it's a great place to get new friends, network, connect with other people, build relationships, better yourself, and to become more self-confident. Because if you're going to be promoting your book, you got to be confident in your product and in your book and in yourself. And that's one way to get yourself out there, to be able to talk about your book.
That is great. Great advice. Thank you. Well, you're full of great advice. Thank you, Dom.
Woohoo!
So how can our listeners contact you?
Sure. So the easy answer is just Google me. Feel free to type in Dominic Brightman or head over to dombrightmon.com. All my social medias are there. I'm on all the social medias like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and even got a YouTube page with not only the podcast interviews, but also a couple of my speeches as well, because I do like to motivate, inspire, educate, and entertain folks in various methods to help them become the best versions of themselves. So feel free to contact me or even email me at dombrightman@gmail.com.
Well, Dominique Brightman, author of Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, thank you very much for being a guest today on the Author Inside You podcast.
Thanks again for having me. You both are awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking to Dom because he shares our same goal to motivate writers.
And if you know somebody who's thinking about writing a book, maybe you could share our podcast and Dom's podcast with them. And until next time,
Right on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.